Okay, so the health aspect of a vegan diet is important if you consider that there have been vegans that have killed their babies, that have maimed their children.
I'm not going to talk about each and every moment in this debate, but I'm here going to present you with how I would respond differently to this particular little conflict as Paul Bashir, the head of Anonymous for the Voiceless, faces off with Frank Tufano. Then I'm going to move on to speaking a little bit more philosophically, generally, and tactically.
Okay, so the health aspect of a vegan diet is important if you consider that there have been vegans that have killed their babies, that have maimed their children, and many young children have suffered at the hands of vegan parents. So do you think these parents need to be informed better about how to properly and adequately nourish a child on a plant-based diet?
No, because I think for every person that you just said, which was probably just made up and I don't even know what you're talking, well, I don't know what you're talking about. For every person that you say is vegan who's harming themselves or their children, I can name at least 1,000 non-vegans that are harming themselves and their babies with their diets and lifestyles.
So you think it's okay for someone to miscarry their child, to kill their baby, to malnourish their child, to have their child taken away from them under the condition of their moral aspect of being on a vegan diet? The reason those children were maimed, killed, or disfigured was because the parents believed in feeding them a vegan diet, this belief system that animals are more important than humans.
Frank, for every person that you say who is vegan who's harmed themselves as a result of their diet or harmed their children as a result of a plant-based diet, because veganism is not about diets, I can name at least 1,000 non-vegans who have harmed themselves with their beliefs and their diets and their children. So this point doesn't need to be discussed anymore.
You said the point of a vegan diet is to eliminate or minimize animal cruelty, the exploitation of animals, but you're saying that it's okay for vegans to harm people because other people are harming people, essentially.
That's not what I said at all.
Well, what you said was, for every few vegans I name, you can name many other people that have harmed and maimed their children. And I agree with that, but that doesn't justify the harming or maiming of children regardless of your beliefs.
My advice is it's always a mistake to fight for the moral high ground. Stop it. At the very beginning of this, I think Paul didn't even notice, but he was presented with a great way out. The initial question he was presented with was, do you think there should be more and better education to help vegans properly raise and nourish their children? Instead of fighting for the moral high ground, be warm and magnanimous and accepting of the other side and agree that there's a problem, affirm that there's a real concern at work there, and then move forward together. Even in a situation of implacable hostility from the other side, that is my advice. So in this case, I'd say, you're right. There are a lot of terrible parents out there. There are parents who are addicted to crack. There are parents who are addicted to heroin. There are parents who are just old-fashioned alcoholics. And they do terrible things when they raise their children. They make terrible mistakes. And those mistakes have consequences, not just for the lives of their children, but for a whole society. And you ask a great question. What can we do in terms of education? And the tragic truth is we're really limited. It seems like no matter how much education we have, there are always going to be some people who are cocaine addicts and some people who are heroin addicts and some people who are alcoholics who become absolutely terrible parents. And you know what? Some of those people are vegan. There are always going to be some bad parents who make terrible choices with terrible consequences who are vegan, and some of them are going to get into the newspapers year after year. So I feel you. I understand your concern. Stepping away from drug addiction and alcoholism, you also know there are some people who have all the same problems while being clean and sober because they are just straight up crazy. Any problem caused by drug addiction, including hallucination, some people can have with no drugs at all, just through being plain old crazy. And we live in a society where we respect the civil rights of the parents, and there's this huge question of when and how we can step in and act in the interest of the child. You're right. It's a tragedy, and we as vegans are wrapped up in the same tragedy as meat eaters. And, the most important thing to understand here is when there are bad parents, they're not bad parents because they're vegan. And I think you'd admit the same thing when there were parents who neglect their children or who make terrible decisions that ruin their children's lives, we're not going to say that that's because they were eating meat at the time. And ultimately, there's no excuse for it. There's a challenge here. This is warm and folksy and agreeing with the guy and affirming and saying, you're right. And in a sense, it's also saying, look, I don't want to be on the high moral ground. I don't want to be smarter than you, and I don't want to be better than you, and I don't want to be right. I can be wrong. I can be wrong too. It's saying we can be wrong together, and then we can move forward in this conversation from there.
Okay, so it's okay for vegans to harm people because other people are harming people.
Okay, so if you want to be cute like that, how about I hold the mic? Because that way it's easier for you to understand what I actually said.
How would you knowingly till the land, spray herbicides, insecticides, kill hundreds, depending on what metric we're using? It's trillions worldwide, trillions of insects, rodents, deer, animals. When you till the soil and you spray insecticides and herbicides, kill all the insect, all the plant life that you don't want, you're killing and displacing millions of beings, without question. When that crop grows back, they multiply rapidly. Whatever animals survived, whatever insects survived, there's a new food source, so they start multiplying and growing again. And then what happens? You harvest the field, you destroy their food source, they either starve to death or are picked off by predators, and the cycle repeats itself. And if you need to cover yourself up and wear sunscreen, and you can't even be in the sun for a couple hours in New York City...
Hey, why did you shave?
Why did I shave?
Why did you shave your face? It's not natural, dude.
Because I don't want to look like a dirty piece of in the middle of New York City.
Oh, so you think... Oh, okay, so that... this guy, man.
You got a tattoo on your neck.
You shaved your face and you're standing here saying, don't use sunscreen. What? Dude, your argument is nature, though, and then you shave your face.
I don't want to talk about this in terms of the philosophy of education. I don't want to talk about this in terms of the philosophy of activism. I want to talk about this as a type of flirtation. The advice I'm about to give you in terms of dealing with people in a down-to-earth, folksy way. Folksy is the best word I can come up with here. I think it really is a lot more like an idealized flirtation. For me, a flirtation is not about deceiving the other person. It's not about seducing the other person. It's about letting them know who you are and creating a space, creating a silence in the conversation where they feel comfortable and they can come forward and let you know who they are. For me, by definition, flirtation takes place in a situation where neither party is in love with the other. In fact, the two people flirting, you may not even know if the other person is single or if they're married. You may not know if you're interested or if they're interested or if they could be interested. There are a lot of unknowns, but there's some sense of possibility. And there's an attempt to get to know one another. That, for me, in principle, is flirtation. In a flirtation, you never want to take the moral high ground. You never want to be proving, I'm smarter than you. If anything, you want to, in your conversation, create a platform where the other person feels more intelligent than they really are, where the flirtation itself is flattering or makes them feel empowered and intelligent, makes them feel like their opinion matters to you. I think that's a crucial element of flirtation. You don't want to prove that you're morally superior to the other person. If anything, you want to present yourself as having common ground. If anything, it's advantageous to present yourself as the villain. So if a meat eater says to you, and it could be in this kind of curbside context, it could be that you're giving a lecture at a university in a symposium to an audience, but it could be that you're a heterosexual male and you're talking to a female, you're a vegan male talking to a female who's still making excuses for eating meat. This person you're talking to, the meat eater, says to you that it's inevitable that in the production of wheat, in the production of corn, in the farming of broccoli, that those forms of agriculture are going to kill some animals. Maybe they're going to kill some mice, they're going to kill some insects. I do not respond to that by saying, no, you're wrong. I do not respond to that by trying to take the moral high ground. I do not respond to that by trying to prove that I'm smarter than they are or that I know more than they do. I start by saying, you're right. You're right, I agree, and I can even go further in attacking my own position. You're right. You know what? It goes way further than just farming. It goes way further than agriculture. You want to run a hospital? You got to kill rats. You got to kill cockroaches. You got to kill all kinds of little critters to maintain a standard of excellence and hygiene in that hospital. And if you're committed to running a hospital to benefit human beings, benefit society, whatever, however you want to think of it, if you're committed to running that hospital as a standard of excellence, what are you going to say? Are you going to say one day, no, we've hit our limit. We killed 100 mice to keep this hospital going. We should just stop. We should give up. No. Whether it's going to be 100 mice or 500 mice or 1,000 mice, it's tragic. But if you're committed to the pursuit of this objective, to running this hospital, you're going to kill mice and cockroaches, however many it takes. It's tragic, but what you're saying is true. We as vegans, we still commit to and we take responsibility for killing animals in all kinds of contexts. If you want to run an airport, running an airport requires that you kill birds. Maybe they're seagulls, maybe they're ravens, and it's tragic. But birds can interfere with the radar. Birds can fly into the engines and propellers of the airplanes. They can just straight up crash into the aircraft during takeoff and landing. If you're committed to running this airport, to safety, reliability, and excellence, if you're going to run this airport, you are committed to killing animals to make that happen. And as a vegan, you may not be the one to kill the animals yourself, but you shouldn't lie to yourself. You should know that. So you know what? You're right, and I can go way further than that. I can be magnanimous in agreeing with your opinion. Step 1. Step 2. But you know what? We live in a world where we're forced to make these terrible compromises. We live in a world that is tragic in just the way you've pointed out. But that does not make me want to get down on my hands and knees and crawl through the mud to drink the milk out of a cow's udder. Sorry, I just don't see any relationship between these things. What you say is true. It's tragic and it's inevitable that human beings are going to have to kill some animals in some situations. But I don't see in that an excuse for me to eat cheese, for me to drink milk, for me to make those compromises. I don't see in that a reason for me to give up on the efforts I can make to make the world a better place, just to do the best I can. Any opportunity you get in these situations, whether it's public outreach and education or whether it's a flirtation as such, I think you got to emphasize, look, nothing you're saying is freaking me out. Nothing you're saying is making me angry. My own parents eat meat. My father ate meat until the day he died. My coworkers, all of my teachers that I respected and had admiration for ate meat. And all of the teachers that I despised and hated in school, they all ate meat too. I've grown up surrounded by meat eaters just like you. The purpose of a flirtation is not to trick someone into thinking they want to be in a relationship with you for just one night or for just 1 week. It's not true. It's not seduction. It's not deception. When I say flirtation, I do not mean deception. The purpose of the flirtation is to let you know who I am and for you to let me know who you are and for us to figure out, do we have enough in common where we would want to be in a relationship together, where we should be in a relationship together? Or no, is that not the case? Maybe we should just be friends, or maybe we should just part ways as strangers and never talk again. Maybe there's something else. But the stage of flirtation is precisely that process of going from somebody known, going from somebody who is completely unknown to somebody who is known. I'm not trying to trick people into becoming vegan against their interests, against their instincts. It's not like a seduction or a deception where for one night or for a short time they're going to be engaged in this. I'm interested in getting to know people who have the intelligence and the self-discipline and the talent to be a positive part of the vegan movement. And yeah, it is a kind of flirtation where you meet people and try to figure out, is it you? It doesn't matter. If I give a lecture to 1,000 people, how many of them really possibly have the talent to be vegan, let alone to be a vegan activist or organizer or artist, or somehow work for the advancement of the vegan movement? Is there one person in the crowd? And again, if you're trying to fall in love, if you're trying to find a girlfriend or a boyfriend or get married, you're not trying to recruit 1,000 people. You may be talking to 1,000 people to find that one person, the person with whom you have that common ground, person who you appreciate and who appreciates you. So these interactions, ultimately, if they're not about that kind of discovery, that kind of really honest, down-to-earth revelation of who you are and discover who the other person is, I think there is no point in having the conversation at all. What we're doing here is not convincing each other of facts. It's not sharing data or raw information. It's figuring out, who are you? And what are you motivated to do? What are your assumptions and what are your motivations? And you know what? Maybe you're going to leave this conversation with a motivation to become a better person, to become someone other than who and what you already are. Maybe. And maybe you're just going to learn something else that's going to adjust your attitude a little bit by meeting me and hearing a perspective from someone who is very fundamentally a different kind of person with different assumptions and different motivations about life. So let me just agree with Frank Tufano and take it a step further. An airport, that's an easy example. Hospital, that's an easy example. I used to work in a museum. The museum had a garden on one side and a forest on the other, kind of had forest surrounding it, half the building. In the tropics, right here in Taiwan, how many animals are you going to kill just to keep a wooden chair going? People have decided this chair made out of wood, it should be preserved for future generations in a museum. There are so many animals that want to come in and chew on this chair. Wooden chairs, manuscripts, paintings, calligraphy on scrolls. So many little insects and mice want to come in and eat these things. Have snakes coming into the museum too. And that museum had a team of exterminators at all times working to wipe out all these animals. Okay. What's the value of cultural heritage? What's the value of an unliving, inanimate work of art? How many thousands of rats have to die so this chair, so this painting, so this piece of calligraphy on a scroll can be preserved, can endure for the next generation? Maybe in the end, we have to make the decision to relocate this museum to another location so that it's not being constantly infested with wildlife. That also could be an option. It's tragic and it's true. And in order for veganism to win, I don't have to convince you.